After all the questions surrounding the small number of Green Party candidates that made problematic statements, and of course some were just unacceptable, the BBC finally asked Reform about some of their candidates saying the most vile things. Why the Green Party responded by condemning, the Green Party responded by condemning certain statements. Deputy Reform leader Richard Tice had a very different response.
But many voters do still have concerns about reform. And just as you and I have talked about many times, you have had problems on lots of occasions when some of your candidates' views have been revealed to be offensive. Now, as Bridget Phillipson mentioned, but we were going to ask you about this anyway, one of your new councillors who's just been elected in Sunderland previously suggested online that people should melt Nigerians to fill potholes.
We have an internal party process. But here's the point.
Well, it's not a very good one if somebody who expresses that can be elected.
We've heard all the smearing and the sneering. Let me tell you what people are really concerned about.
Forgive me.
Laura,
that's not
I'm going later to a campaign against the scourge of anti-Semitism, right, which is the greatest threat facing us here in, particularly in London, but elsewhere across the UK. That's what people are really concerned about. We've stood up strongly for the Jewish community. And if people have said daft things, of course it'll be looked at. But, you know, let's just remember we've got a party that has been successful, that is now the anti-Semitic Green Party. That's what people are most worried about.
I want to ask you about your party. One of your new Sunderland councillors, so a man who was elected to represent Reform, suggested melting Nigerians to fill potholes. Is that person who's expressed those views somebody you are happy to see represent Reform?
This weekend, we are celebrating our incredible successes. Like any party, you have internal party processes to look at where people have said or done the wrong thing.
Do you condemn those remarks?
Laura, I condemn anything that is wrong and inappropriate.
And is that wrong and inappropriate?
The key point is voters have heard all of this smearing and this sneering against all of us, and they voted for more reform because they want action, they want delivery. They're sick of the failures of the Tories and Labour that have impoverished them because of mass immigration and because of net stupid zero. That's what really winds people up.
I mean, that's a really odd response. I mean, if you're faced with a question about a candidate who says, melts Nigerians to fill potholes, I don't think that's daft. Do you? I think that's abhorrent. That's disgusting. And the fact that Richard Tice couldn't even condemn it. I mean, she said, at least condemn those words. And he said, I condemn things that are wrong. Well, obviously, we don't like things that are bad, of course. But the fact he couldn't say that is a disgusting comment, and if that person made that comment, we're going to make sure we get rid of them. Whilst also, look, we have long talked about strategy from the left when it comes to media smears and how we've called for Zach Polanski not to apologise and to, you know, try and reframe the conversation on your terms, for example. However, if you are faced with quotes like that, you can't say, that's smearing, that's sneering. No, that's not smearing. That is literally holding you to account. This isn't just some random Reform member. This is someone who was elected and, as far as I know, is still a Reform councillor newly elected, right? And look, I do have a problem with the media bringing up specific, again, random members and to try and tarnish the party name like that. They did it with Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. They've done it to Zach Polanski's Greens. I do have a problem with that because, like, any random member can say something horrific, and obviously that can't be, you know, that doesn't mean it's endorsed by the leadership. But that's the game the media have tried to play. That's the game the media played with the Labour Party and Corbyn and Zach Polanski under the Greens. And despite the fact that Laura Koonsberg did bring something up about reform, during the week up to the run-up to the local elections, it was dominated by attacks on the Green Party. I also thought it was kind of crazy to say, people are concerned about me going to an anti-Semitism march. Well, first of all, Nigel Farage was also invited to this so-called standing up to anti-Semitism march. The man has said horrific anti-Semitic things. It just goes to show that, like, is this a serious march? I don't know. I cannot fathom that kind of response. So, look, I'm glad that Laura Koonsberg did bring that up. But Reform have not had wall-to-wall coverage when it comes to racist things from the Reform Party. I mean, Zach Polanski did a rally and someone held a Reform banner and did the Nazi salute. There was barely any media coverage of that. Absolutely insane. And then, of course, Richard Tice manages to sneak in the anti-Semitic Greens. Even though, that Laura Kuenssberg asked that question, she did a terrible job of, I thought, pushing back. She allowed him to speak. She allowed him to say, well, I'm going to an anti-Semitic, standing up against anti-Semitism march. Look how anti-racist I am. Look at my anti-racist credentials. Insane. But why don't the media investigate this? So this is a graph. I think it was posted by Philip Proudfoot. He didn't make the graph, but he shared it. And it shows British attitudes towards Jewish people and Israel. And if you look at the Green Party, they are, in terms of attitudes, one of the least anti-Semitic. When it comes to reform, they tend to have higher anti-Semitic attitudes. But when it comes to Israel, the Greens are quite anti-Israel. And Reform, the attitudes from Reform voters and members are pro-Israel. It's almost as if there is no connection between supporting Israel and supporting Jewish people, and Reform literally shows that. So why aren't the media looking into that? Right? Why aren't the media saying, but there does seem to be a unique problem with the Reform Party, because if you're Reform, you're more likely to be anti-Semitic or hold anti-Semitic attitudes. Yet the media has been trying to paint the idea that the Greens are specifically anti-Semitic. It's crazy. Now, again, I mean, I mentioned about how Farage was invited. Of course, he made anti-Semitic claims. Again, I think this was forgive me for saying, probably a pro-Israel march. I mean, Peter Tatchell went, and he was attacked by people there because apparently he was pro-Hamas, because, he's nominally pro-Palestine? Insane. That comment to put to Tice is by no means the only candidate. There have been a plethora of racist comments from other Reform candidates. Ben, what do you make of Tice completely downplaying that really, really disgusting comment? And what's your assessment of the media being and how much they've covered the Greens compared to Reform on the question of dodgy candidates?
So first of all, let's think about the candidate, because actually, if you read Hope Not Hate's original article, it's not just the meltdown Nigerians comment, which is bad. Don't get me wrong, that's really bad. But he's also like an avowed sexist as well. It's interesting how those things often go together. Glenn Gibbons, who, by the way, on the Reform leaflet that's been handed out, is called Glenn Gibbons. Like, they actually spelt his name like even though his name is spelt Gibbins, which is if you're called Glenn Gibbons, don't start on anyone. Like, obviously, change your name first. Don't start on it. That's a bad idea. Don't stick your neck out. But yeah, they misspelled his name on all their leaflets, first of all, as Glenn Gibbons. But he was also complaining about women's sports commentators back in 2017, and said that women sports commentators should stick to cooking, sewing, and homemaking. He really doesn't like women. He really doesn't like foreigners, obviously. And also, he really doesn't like being able to spell properly. He doesn't like our language. I just find it interesting that he misspelt can't the same way twice in two posts, one in 2017 and one in 2019, in the exact same way. He misspelled, as in the word can't, cannot, right? He spelled it C-A-R-N-T. I genuinely don't know how you can make that mistake, like, however many years apart. It seems to me that this guy must be putting on some sort of persona, because I genuinely don't believe that that's a sincere mistake. He's misspelled it in exactly the same way several years apart. It doesn't make sense to me. He's a strange guy. Yep, no doubt about it. He's a strange guy. And Richard Tice is a dickhead, obviously. But on a slightly more nuanced point, Richard Tice is also using the veil of Israel to cover for racism, cover for anti-Semitism in his own party, cover for misogyny in his own party, and cover for, of course, anti-Black or anti-Nigerian racism within his own party. The whole anti-Semitism is a scourge thing made me think back to a video I watched from AJ Newsbroke, who used to produce a show with Matt Lieb and Francesca Fiorentini. And I remember Matt Lieb, who's Jewish himself, saying that Steve Bannon had been asked a question about, you know, why did Steve Bannon say that he didn't want his children to go to school with Jewish people, with Jewish children, or rather he had concerns about them going to school with Jewish children. And the media were asking, are you anti-Semitic? Is that what's going on here? And Steve Bannon turned around to them and said, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. I've always been a supporter of the state of Israel. And Matt Lieb was saying to him, that's not the question I asked you. That's not even close to the question I asked you. So the idea that anti-Semitism and support for Israel are completely incompatible just doesn't work in the first instance. But also, it's constantly used as this cover. We're probably going to be attending a Tommy Robinson march at the end of this week. I wouldn't be surprised if the same people who are being racist and anti-Semitic there are going to be waving Israel flags. There's a lot of things that I think we can take from this. But one of the things is the Aaron Bastani point, which is always worth bringing up, which is the right once used to say that we should talk about countries, we should stop talking about other countries and start talking about the needs of people in Britain. And they were wrong to drop that point. They should have kept talking about the needs of people in Britain. And it's the lesson that the Green Party needs to learn, because you're absolutely right. Like, coverage of the Greens have been held to totally different standards to the ones Reform are being held to in this election. Completely different standards. But we can learn a lot from them. We need to don't admit fault. No concessions. Absolutely not. Because did you notice the way that Richard Tice operates? Did you notice the way that as soon as Laura Kuenssberg asked the question, he said, sure, we have problems with our vetting process, but let me tell you what people are really concerned about. And he tried to move it on to anti-Semitism, but that didn't work. She tried to redirect. So he said, let me tell you what people are really concerned about, and then moved on to net stupid zero and the effect, or supposed effect, of that on cost of living, right? I'm not going to lie. The Greens need to watch that and learn from it. As soon as the point is brought up, he moves straight on to the things that he wants to talk about, so that he's setting the narrative. He's a dickhead. I agree. He's a dickhead. But he's got the right idea when it comes to media performances. He's been well trained when it comes to media performances, and the Greens need to learn from that. They need to start as soon as a topic's brought up, and I know I'm repeating myself, and I'm repeating myself so much because I'm hoping that somebody in the Green Party who's in a position is watching this and can go, we need to start looking into bridging and how we can just quickly move things onto the cost of living. Whenever anything that's inconvenient for us comes up, we have to know the connection between that and the cost of living so that we can make that jump as soon as possible. Richard Tice kind of does it clumsily here, I'm not going to lie.
He doesn't have the riz when he's doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, but it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yes.
Strategically, right? Obviously not the right thing to do morally, but in that situation. But the right thing to do strategically.